you, respect it. If you keep trying to make a man notice you, you may push him farther away. But the moment you stop chasing validation and start valuing yourself, something unexpected happens. He begins to notice the space you once filled. He starts wondering about you. And before he even realizes it, he finds himself chasing the very woman who stopped chasing him. There is something fascinating about human nature that most people never fully understand. The more desperately we pursue something, the more it seems to slip through our fingers. Yet when we become comfortable in our own worth, when we stop forcing outcomes and start living with purpose, the energy around us changes completely. I want you to imagine a woman named Sarah. Sarah was the kind of woman who gave everything she had to the people she loved. When she met a man she truly cared about, she poured her heart into the relationship. She checked on him constantly. She replied within seconds. She rearranged her schedule to fit his. She worried when he seemed distant and worked harder whenever she felt him pulling away. At first, she thought this was love. After all, isn't love supposed to be about effort? Isn't it supposed to be about showing someone how much they mean to you? But slowly something painful began happening. The more she chased, the less interested he seemed. The more she tried to prove her value, the more invisible she felt. One day, exhausted from carrying the emotional weight of the relationship, she made a decision that changed everything. She stopped chasing, not because she was angry, not because she wanted revenge, not because she wanted to play games. She stopped because she finally realized something important. Her value was never supposed to be proven. Her value already existed. And the moment she understood that truth, her entire life began to transform. You see, one of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships is believing attention creates attraction. You think if they give more, text more, call more, explain more, and sacrifice more, the other person will finally appreciate them. But attraction doesn't grow from pressure. It grows from appreciation. And people rarely appreciate what they never have a chance to miss. Think about your favorite song. Imagine hearing it every second of every day. Eventually, even the most beautiful melody will become background noise. Not because the song lost its value, but because constant availability removed its impact. The same principle often applies to relationships. When someone knows they can always have your attention regardless of how they treat you, they stop noticing the gift they're receiving. That doesn't mean they are bad people. It means they are human. And human beings naturally recognize value more clearly when they understand it is not guaranteed. This is why the first thing you must do if you want a man to start chasing you without realizing it is to start chasing your own growth. Most people expect relationship advice to begin with strategies. They want techniques. They want secret messages. They want psychological tricks. But the truth is far simpler. The most attractive thing about a person is a life that doesn't revolve around someone else's approval. When Sarah stopped focusing on him, she started focusing on herself. She joined classes she had postponed for years. She spent more time with friends. She developed hobbies that made her feel alive. She began reading, learning, growing, and expanding her world. Something remarkable happened. Her happiness stopped depending on his attention. And once that happened, she carried herself differently. Her conversations changed. Her confidence changed. Even her smile changed. Because genuine confidence is not something you perform. It is something that emerges when your happiness has roots deeper than another person's opinion. People can feel that energy. A man can feel it too, without realizing why. He begins noticing the difference. The woman who once seemed available every second now seems fulfilled. The woman who once waited for his messages now appears busy creating a meaningful life. And suddenly, curiosity begins to grow. Curiosity is powerful. In fact, curiosity often becomes the beginning of pursuit. Many men are not drawn to women because they are easy to keep. They are drawn to women who inspire admiration, women whose lives have depth, women who respect themselves enough to continue moving forward, regardless of who stays or leaves. Let me tell you something Steve Harvey has often emphasized throughout his life philosophy. A person teaches others how to treat them, not through words, through standards, through actions, through consistency. When you constantly accept less than you deserve, people begin believing that is your standard. But when you quietly raise your standards, everything changes. Sarah stopped explaining why she deserved Ed better. She simply started living as though she already believed it. If he canceled plans repeatedly, she stopped rearranging her life. If he disappeared for days, she stopped chasing explanations. If he wanted access to her energy, he had to show genuine effort. Not because she was trying to punish him, because she finally understood her time was valuable. And something interesting happened. The same man who once took her presence for granted started making more effort. He started reaching out more often. He started asking questions. He started initiating conversations. At first, Sarah was confused. She wondered why, but the answer was simple. He was finally experiencing what her absence felt like. Sometimes people don't recognize your value when you're standing right in front of them. Sometimes they recognize it when they notice the space you leave behind. Now, I need to be very clear about something. This is not about manipulation. Manipulation comes from insecurity. Growth comes from self-respect. If your goal is merely to make someone miss you, you're still making your life revolve around them. But if your goal is to become the best version of yourself, something beautiful happens. Whether they chase you or not, you win. Because your happiness no longer depends on their decision. And ironically, that independence often becomes the very thing that attracts them back. Men, like all people, are naturally drawn to confidence, not arrogance, not pride, confidence, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need constant reassurance, the kind that knows its worth even in silence, the kind that understands rejection does not reduce value. When a woman reaches that place emotionally, she becomes unforgettable because she radiates something rare. She radiates peace. And in a world filled with desperation, peace is magnetic. Many people spend years trying to convince someone to love them. But the people who leave the strongest impreg, Ession, are usually those who stopped trying to convince anyone of anything. They simply became more themselves. They invested in their purpose. They honored their values. They protected their energy. And they trusted that the right people would recognize their worth. That is when pursuit often begins, not because they demanded attention, but because they stopped needing it. And that lesson has the power to change everything. Sarah never expected the change to happen so quickly. A few weeks after she stopped making a man the center of her universe, she noticed something different. Her phone began lighting up more often. The same man who once took hours to respond suddenly replied within minutes. The same man who rarely asked about her day started showing genuine interest. The same man who seemed comfortable keeping her at arm's length began finding reasons to stay connected. But what surprised her most was not his behavior. It was her own. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't anxiously waiting. She wasn't staring at her phone wondering when he would call. She wasn't replaying conversations in her head. She wasn't trying to decode every message. Instead, she was living. And that is where the real transformation began. You see, many people think attraction is created by getting someone's attention. But often attraction grows when your attention is no longer being given away so freely. There is a lesson hidden inside every successful relationship. The healthiest connections are built between two complete people, not two people desperately trying to complete each other. When someone becomes your entire world, you unintentionally place pressure on the relationship that it was never designed to carry. No person can be your purpose. No person can be your identity. No person can be responsible for your happiness 24 hours a day. That burden eventually exhausts everyone involved. But when you create a meaningful life of your own, something powerful happens. You bring joy into the relationship instead of demanding it from the relationship. And people feel that difference. Think about the sun for a moment. The sun does not chase anyone. It doesn't beg people to admire it. It doesn't force anyone to notice its light. It simply shines. And because it shines consistently, everything around it is drawn to its warmth. That is exactly what happens when a woman focuses on becoming her best self. She stops shining, she starts shining. And the people around her naturally become curious about the source of that light. One evening, Sarah attended a gathering with friends. Months earlier, she would have spent the entire event checking her phone and wondering why he wasn't texting. This time was different. She laughed. She shared stories. She enjoyed the moment. She felt present. At some point during the evening, her phone buzzed. It was him. Then another message arrived, and another. For a brief moment, T, she smiled. Not because she finally had his attention, but because she realized something important. She no longer needed it. That realization changed everything. The strongest position you can ever have in a relationship is not making someone need you. It is knowing you will be okay whether they stay or leave. That kind of emotional strength creates a powerful shift. When a man senses that your happiness is no longer dependent on him, he often begins to see you differently. Not because you have become cold, not because you have become distant, but because you have become emotionally secure. And emotional security is incredibly attractive. Most people are attracted to confidence, but few understand where confidence actually comes from. Confidence is not believing everyone will choose you. Confidence is believing you will be fine even if they don't. That distinction changes your entire energy. When you're afraid of losing someone, you start making decisions from fear. You tolerate behavior you shouldn't tolerate. You lower standards you shouldn't lower. You stay silent when you should speak. You compromise pieces of yourself just to keep someone around. But when you know your worth, fear loses its grip. You stop negotiating your value. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into someone's comfort zone. You stop chasing people who are comfortable watching you run. And that is often when they start running towards you. There is a story about a man who spent years chasing a butterfly. Every time he got close, it flew away. He became frustrated, exhausted, discouraged. Finally, he stopped chasing. He sat down in a beautiful garden and focused on creating something worth enjoying. Flowers bloomed around him. The air became peaceful. The environment became beautiful. And after some time, the butterfly returned on its own. Whether the story is true or not doesn't matter. The lesson certainly is. People spend so much time chasing butterflies, lies that they forget to build gardens. But the garden is where the magic happens. Your growth is the garden. Your dreams are the garden. Your purpose is the garden. Your peace is the garden. And when your life becomes beautiful, people naturally become curious about it. The irony is that the more focused you become on creating that beautiful life, the less obsessed you become with who is watching. That is when your power returns. Sarah began noticing something else as well. The more she respected herself, the more others respected her too. Friends valued her time more. Family appreciated her presence more. Co-workers listened more carefully. Why? Because she has started treating herself differently. People often mirror the value you place on yourself. If you constantly communicate that your needs don't matter, others eventually believe it. But when you communicate self-respect through your actions, the entire world responds differently. This is one of the greatest regarding relationship lessons anyone can learn. Self-respect is not selfishness. Many people confuse the two. Selfishness says, only my needs matter. Self-respect says, my needs matter too. There is a huge difference. A woman who respects herself does not beg for attention. She does not compete for love. She does not sacrifice her dignity to keep someone interested. Instead, she recognizes that healthy relationships require mutual effort, mutual respect, mutual investment, mutual appreciation. And if those things are absent, she does not chase. She chooses herself. Now here is where many people make a mistake. They hear advice like this and decide to become emotionally unavailable. They think the solution is to stop caring, to act distant, to become cold. But that is not the lesson. The goal is not to care less. The goal is to care wisely. There is a difference. A healthy woman still loves deeply. She still gives generously. She still shows kindness and compassion. The difference is that she no longer abandons herself in the process. She understands that love should add to her life, not consume it. And because of that understanding, she becomes stronger, calmer, more attractive, more magnetic, not because she changed who she was, but because she stopped giving away pieces of herself for free. One afternoon, Sarah looked back at the woman she had been 6 months earlier. She remembered the anxiety, the waiting, the overthinking, the fear, and she barely recognized that version of herself anymore. Not because her circumstances had changed dramatically, because she had changed. The woman who once chased validation had discovered self-worth. The woman who once feared being alone had learned to enjoy her own company. The woman who once measured her value through someone else's attention had finally started measuring it through her own standards. And that inner transformation was impossible to ignore. The man noticed it. Her friend, S, noticed it. Her family noticed it. But most importantly, she noticed it. Because the greatest reward is never making someone chase you. The greatest reward is becoming the kind of person who no longer has to chase anyone. And that is where the next lesson begins. There comes a moment in every person's life when they are forced to choose between two paths. One path is familiar. It is the path of constantly seeking approval, constantly wondering what someone else thinks, constantly adjusting your worth according to another person's attention. The other path is far more difficult. It is the path of self-discovery, the path of trusting yourself, the path of becoming so deeply connected to your own purpose that you stop measuring your value through someone else's behavior. Most people spend years on the first path. Very few have the courage to walk the second. Sarah had finally stepped onto that second path, and what she discovered there changed her forever. One morning, E woke up and realized she hadn't checked her phone the moment she opened her eyes. Months earlier, that would have been impossible. Back then, her first thought every morning was about him. Had he texted? Had he called? Was he thinking about her? Now her first thoughts were different. What goals did she want to accomplish today? What memories did she want to create? What kind of person did she want to become? It may sound like a small change, but in reality, it was enormous. Because wherever your focus goes, your energy follows. And for the first time in a long time, her energy was flowing toward her future instead of toward her fears. This is one of the most powerful things you can do if you want a man to start chasing you without even realizing it. Become focused on something bigger than the relationship. People are naturally drawn toward those who have direction. Think about the individuals who leave a lasting impression on others. They are rarely the ones sitting around waiting to be chosen. They are the ones building something meaningful. They are pursuing dreams, learning new skills, creating opportunities, living with purpose. Purpose creates momentum, and momentum is attractive. A person with momentum feels alive. They have a spark in their eyes. They carry excitement in their voice. They radiate possibility. And whether people admit it or not, everyone is attracted to possibility. One day, Sarah received a message from the man she had spent so much time worrying about. The message was simple. He asked if they could meet. Months ago, she would have cleared her entire schedule instantly. Now she paused, not to play games, not to create mystery, simply because she genuinely had other priorities. For the first time, she wasn't available at a moment's notice, and that difference mattered. You see, when someone knows they occupy the center of your universe, they often become comfortable. But when they realize your life is S-rich, meaningful, and moving forward with or without them, something changes inside them. They begin to see you through new eyes. Suddenly, your time feels valuable. Your attention feels valuable. Your presence feels valuable. Why? Because value is often connected to scarcity, not artificial scarcity, real scarcity, the kind that comes from having a full and meaningful life. Imagine two books sitting on a shelf. One is everywhere, thousands of copies untouched and forgotten. The other is rare. People wait months to find it. Which one sparks curiosity? Which one feels special? Human psychology has always worked this way. We tend to appreciate what requires effort. We value what cannot be easily replaced. And when you become a woman who values her own time, other people begin valuing it too. But there is another lesson here, one that is even more important. A man starts chasing when he feels inspired, not controlled, not manipulated, inspired. Many people believe Eve attraction is about creating jealousy, making someone nervous, playing emotional games. But those tactics only create temporary reactions. Real pursuit comes from admiration. When a man genuinely admires a woman, he naturally wants to move closer to her world. He wants to understand her. He wants to spend time with her. He wants to be part of her journey. Admiration cannot be forced. It must be earned through authenticity. Sarah never pretended to be someone she wasn't. She didn't transform into a different person. She simply became more fully herself. She stopped hiding her ambitions. She stopped minimizing her dreams. She stopped apologizing for wanting more from life. And that authenticity made her unforgettable. There is something incredibly attractive about someone who is comfortable in their own skin. Someone who doesn't constantly seek permission to exist. Someone who isn't afraid to be themselves, because authenticity gives other people permission to be authentic too. The world is filled with people performing, pretending, trying to fit expectations, trying to become whatever they think others want. But genuine confidence stands out because it is rare. When a woman embraces who she truly is, she creates a kind of freedom that others can feel. And freedom is magnetic. The truth is, many men spend years searching for a woman who knows her worth, not because they want perfection, not because they want someone flawless, because they want someone grounded, someone secure, someone who brings peace rather than chaos, someone who chooses them without needing them. That distinction matters. Need creates pressure. Choice creates connection. When someone feels you are with them because you genuinely want to be, not because you are afraid to be alone, the relationship becomes healthier. stronger, more authentic. And ironically, that is often when attraction grows the most. As the weeks passed, Sarah noticed something fascinating. Through dating, the more she focused on her own life, the less she worried about whether he was chasing her. And strangely enough, the more effort he seemed to make. He called more often. He planned dates. He asked deeper questions. He invested more energy. But by then, her perspective had changed. She was no longer asking, how do I make him want me? She was asking, does this relationship align with the life I'm building? That question changed everything. Because powerful women do not spend their lives trying to be chosen. They spend their lives deciding what deserves a place in their lives. That mindset shifts the entire dynamic. Instead of viewing yourself as someone waiting for acceptance, you become someone evaluating compatibility. Instead of chasing, you observe. Instead of proving your worth, you protect it. And that is when your confidence becomes unshakable. The most attractive woman in any room is not necessarily the most beautiful, not necessarily the wealthiest. Not necessarily the most popular. It is often the woman who knows exactly who she is. The woman who carries herself with quiet certainty. The woman who understands that her value does not rise or fall based on another person's attention. The woman who has built a life she genuinely loves. Because when you love your life, desperation disappears. And when desperation disappears, attraction often appears. That is one of life's most fascinating paradoxes. The harder you chase, the farther people run. The more comfortable you become with yourself, the more people are drawn toward you. Not because you are trying to attract them, because confidence naturally attracts. And what Sarah learned next would become the most important lesson of all. As Sarah looked back on her journey, she finally understood something that had taken years to learn. The man was never the center of the story. She was. For so long, she had believed happiness lived somewhere outside herself. She thought HT was hidden inside someone else's attention, someone else's affection, someone else's decision to stay. But life has a way of teaching us lessons when we are finally ready to hear them. And the lesson she learned was simple. The moment you stop looking for your worth in another person's eyes, you begin seeing your worth through your own. That changes everything. Because when you truly know your value, you stop begging for what should be given freely. You stop convincing people to see what is already there. You stop shrinking yourself to fit inside spaces that were never designed for your growth. Instead, you rise quietly, confidently, powerfully. You become the woman who walks into a room without needing approval. The woman who loves deeply without losing herself. The woman who gives generously without abandoning her standards. The woman who understands that real love is not something you chase. It is something that meets you when you are already walking toward your purpose. And here is the beautiful irony. When you become that woman, people notice, not because you demanded attention, not because you played games, not because you created drama. They notice because your energy changes, your confidence changes, your presence changes. You carry yourself differently. You speak differently. You live differently. And without realizing it, the very people you once chased begin moving towards you, not because you forced them, because they are drawn to the strength they now see. But whether they come or not is no longer the most important question. That is the real victory. The real victory is waking up every morning excited about your own life. The real victory is knowing that your happiness does not depend on a text message, a phone call, a compliment, or someone's approval. The real victory is becoming emotionally free, because freedom creates peace, and peace creates confidence, and confidence creates a life that naturally attracts the right people. So if there is one message I want you to carry with you today, let it be this. Stop chasing people who are unsure about your value. Stop running after validation. Stop making someone else the author of your happiness. Instead, invest in yourself, grow, learn, dream bigger, build a life so meaningful that you become proud of the person staring back at you in the mirror. And as you do, something remarkable will happen. You will discover that the love you were desperately searching for was never meant to begin with someone else's attention. It was meant to begin with your own self-respect, because the woman who knows her worth does not have to chase. She inspires pursuit. She inspires respect. She inspires admiration. Most importantly, she inspires herself. And when that day comes, when you finally understand how valuable you truly are, you will realize that the greatest achievement was never making him chase you. The greatest achievement was becoming someone worth chasing while never needing to be chased at all. That is where real confidence lives. That is where real peace begins. And that is where your most beautiful chapter starts.